Don't start with the guilt trip, my mom said, her voice light, almost amused. Christmas is getting way too expensive this year. We're keeping it low-key. Just family. You get it, right? I told her okay. I always did. Because in my family, okay meant obedient. It meant invisible. It meant you don't ask questions that make people uncomfortable. That night, December pressed in on our small house like a held breath. The heater hummed. Cheap string lights flickered in the window, half of them already dead. My daughter sat on the floor with safety scissors, cutting crooked stars from scrap paper. I told her we were doing a quiet Christmas. She nodded like she understood, the way kids do when they don't want to disappoint you. I was in the kitchen when my phone vibrated. A video. Posted by my brother. Music blasting. A living room glowing gold. Wrapping paper everywhere like snowfall. My mother's laugh. Unmistakable, sharp and proud. Kids screaming as they ripped open boxes. Big ones. Familiar ones. Gifts I remembered paying for without ever putting my name on. The caption burned. Nothing like family at Christmas, Christmas tree, red heart. My daughter walked in behind me. She didn't speak at first. He just watched my face, then the screen. Her eyebrows pulled together slowly. Mom, she asked quietly, I thought Christmas was too expensive this year. That was the moment something inside me finally gave up trying to stay intact. Hi everyone. My name is Maricel Quinn, and for years I was the quiet solution to everyone else's problems. The extra bank transfer. The I'll handle it. The one who never complained because love I thought meant sacrifice. I watched my daughter turn away, pretending she needed the bathroom. I heard the door close gently, like she didn't want to disturb anyone with her hurt. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't about gifts. It was about who mattered and who didn't. I didn't text my brother. I didn't call my mother. I didn't leave a comment under the video. Instead, I opened my banking app. One by one, I ended the payments. Rent help. Phone bills. Temporary support that had somehow lasted years. No speeches. No warnings. Just quiet confirmations lighting up my screen. When the last one went through, my phone buzzed again. Not a thank you. Not an apology. A missed call. And I knew before answering that Christmas was about to get very loud. The phone kept vibrating on the counter, sharp and impatient, like it was offended I wasn't answering. I let it ring until the screen went dark. The silence afterward felt earned. I knocked softly on the bathroom door. Sweetheart. My voice stayed calm even though my chest wasn't. It's just me. She opened it with red eyes and a brave face that broke my heart more than tears ever could. I knelt and pulled her into my arms, breathing in her shampoo, grounding myself in the only thing that mattered. They didn't forget us, she said quietly. Did they? That question hurt because it deserved an honest answer. And honesty is heavy. No, I said. They made a choice. I tucked her into bed early. Christmas lights from the neighbor's house painted slow colors across her wall. When her breathing finally evened out, I stepped back into the kitchen. My phone lit up again. Mom, why did my transfer bounce? Brother, call me. No. An aunt I hadn't heard from in months. Everything okay? I stared at the messages like they were written in a language I'd finally stopped translating. For years, money had been my apology for existing. My proof of loyalty. My way of staying included without being invited. I thought of every just this once. Every emergency that wasn't really an emergency. Every Christmas where my daughter got later. I typed one message to my mother, then erased it. Typed another. Deleted that too. Instead, I set the phone face down and made myself tea I didn't want. My hands shook, but my decision didn't. Because somewhere between my daughter's quiet question and those unpaid confirmations, something had shifted. They weren't panicking because they missed us. They were panicking because the safety net had disappeared. And tomorrow morning, when the bills didn't pay themselves and the silence stretched longer than they could control, they'd finally realize I wasn't bluffing. Morning came without mercy. My phone exploded before the sun fully rose. Calls stacked on calls, messages tumbling over each other like they were afraid to be ignored. I watched the screen light up while making my daughter's breakfast, the normalcy almost surreal. Toast. Juice. Peanut butter spread too thin because that's what we had. Mom, she said softly, watching me. Are we in trouble? I knelt beside her chair and met her eyes. No, I said. And for the first time I meant it. We're going to be okay. After I walked her to the bus stop, I sat in my car and finally checked the messages. Mom, you embarrassed us. Brother, you had no right to cut us off like that. Mom again, we raised you better than this. I laughed, once. Short. Because better than this apparently meant quiet funding, no questions asked. I drove to work with their words echoing, but something else echoed louder. My daughter's voice asking why she didn't count. At lunch, my brother showed up unannounced. He didn't knock, he never did when he thought he was owed something. He leaned against my office doorframe, arms crossed, jaw tight. Are you trying to punish us? He asked. No, I said evenly. I'm choosing my child. His face hardened. So you're going to let Mom struggle? Let the kids suffer. There was the familiar manipulation. Guilt dressed up as morality. You already had Christmas, I replied. You posted it. Silence stretched. For the first time, he didn't have a comeback ready. He left without saying goodbye. That afternoon, my mother sent one final message. You're tearing this family apart. I stared at it, then closed my phone. Because families don't break when one person stops giving. They break when the truth finally shows who was holding everything together. That evening, my mother came to my house. She didn't call first. She never did when she wanted control. Her car pulled into the driveway just as I was helping my daughter with homework. I felt it before I saw it, that old tightening in my chest, the instinct to brace. Stay here, I told my daughter gently. I'll be right back. Mom stood on the porch with her arms folded, lips pressed thin, wearing the same coat I'd bought her 2 winters ago because she said hers was falling apart. The irony almost made me smile. So this is how you treat family now? She said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Her eyes scanned the living room, sharp and judgmental. Cutting us off like criminals? I didn't cut off family, I replied quietly. I stopped funding lies. Her face flushed. You're being dramatic. It was one Christmas video. One lie, I corrected. In front of my child. She scoffed. Children forget. Adults shouldn't be so sensitive. That sentence landed like a slap. I thought of my daughter's small voice. Her careful bravery. The way she learned in one moment that honesty didn't protect you in this family. You taught me to sacrifice, I said. You just never taught me when to stop. Mom's voice softened, the dangerous kind of soft. If you do this, don't expect help when you need it. I met her gaze, steady. I already know who helps me. She looked past me then into the hallway toward my daughter's room. Something flickered in her eyes. Calculation, not regret. And that's when I understood. This wasn't over. They weren't done trying to take what they thought was theirs. The next move came quietly, the way real damage always does. It started with a phone call from my daughter's school. Nothing alarming in the tone, just careful. Professional. The kind of voice that already knows too much. Miss Quinn, the counselor said, we had a family member stop by today. She had concerns. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. What kind of concerns? Pause. About financial instability. Emotional stress at home. I didn't need to ask who. By the time I arrived, my mother was already gone. But her fingerprints were everywhere. Folded arms, lowered voice, the performance of worry. The same one she used whenever she wanted control without looking cruel. My daughter sat beside me in the office, swinging her legs nervously. Grandma asked me if we were poor now, she whispered. I told her we were fine. Something cold settled behind my ribs. On the drive home, I realized this was never about Christmas. Or money. Or even my brother. It was about punishment. That night, I pulled out every document I'd ever kept without thinking I'd need them. Bank transfers. Receipts. Messages asking for help. Urgent, just this once, you're a lifesaver. Years of proof stacked neatly on my dining table. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I organized. Because when people like my mother feel powerless, they don't reflect. They escalate. And I wasn't going to let them rewrite my story, or my daughter's. As I slid the last folder shut, my phone buzzed with a group message I'd been removed from years ago. My brother had added me back. The message read, "We need to talk. This has gone too far." I stared at it for a long moment. Then I smiled, slowly. Because for the first time they were the ones asking. We met at my brother's house, neutral ground he called it. I called it familiar territory, designed to remind me where I usually stood. My mother sat on the couch like a judge. My brother paced. His wife avoided my eyes. The kids were sent upstairs, which told me everything I needed to know about how honest this conversation was going to be. You blindsided us, my brother said first. You made us look bad. I sat down slowly, crossing my legs. You did that yourselves. Mom leaned forward. We were worried about your daughter. About stability. I nodded once. So was I. That's why I stopped paying for yours. Her lips tightened. You always twist things. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I opened my folder and slid it across the table. Receipts. Dates. Amounts. Notes that said rent, utilities, school fees. Years of quiet support I never asked credit for. You said Christmas was too expensive, I continued. But somehow there was money for everything else. My brother stopped pacing. This isn't fair, he muttered. No, I agreed. It wasn't. For a long time. Mom's voice cracked, not with remorse but fear. What do you want? The old me would have said an apology. Inclusion. Love. I want you to stop, I said. Stop involving my child. Stop lying about money. Stop pretending I owe you. Silence settled like dust. As I stood to leave, my mother said quietly, if you walk out, things won't be the same. I paused at the door. They already aren't, I said. I didn't hear from them for 3 days. No calls. No messages. No emergencies that somehow only I could solve. The silence was unfamiliar and telling. It meant they were regrouping. People like my family don't let go of control easily. They look for another angle. Came in the form of a letter. Certified. Official looking. Heavy in my hands. Inside was a demand. My brother claiming I had promised long-term financial support, that cutting it off had caused hardship. My mother's words were woven through it, even if her name wasn't signed. Obligation dressed up as entitlement. I didn't panic. I called a lawyer instead. We sat across from each other while I laid out everything. Transfers, messages, timelines, the school incident, the pressure. He listened quietly, then looked up and said something that made my shoulders finally drop. You were never obligated, he said. But they might be. That night I tucked my daughter into bed. She asked if Grandma was mad at us. Maybe, I said gently. But that doesn't mean we're wrong. She nodded, trusting me in a way that felt sacred. A week later, my lawyer sent a response. Firm, factual, unshakable. It included notice to cease contact with my daughter's school, a clear boundary on communication, and documentation of every dollar I'd ever given. No threats. Just truth. The reply from my family came fast this time. Not anger. Panic. Because when manipulation fails, all that's left is reality. And reality was finally on my side. The call came on Christmas Eve. I let it ring while I watched my daughter tape the last paper snowflake to the window. Our tree was small. Our gifts were modest. But the house felt warm in a way it never had before. Honest, unbraced, safe. When I answered, my mother's voice was different. Softer. Careful. We don't want problems, she said. We just want things to go back to how they were. I looked around my living room. At my daughter humming quietly. At the lights glowing without pretense. I don't, I replied. There was a long pause. Then my brother tried. Apologies wrapped in conditions. Regret with an invoice attached. I listened without interrupting. When he finished, I said, I've already given you everything I can. What about family? My mother asked. I thought of my daughter's question. Did they forget us? And felt the answer settle into something solid. Family doesn't lie to children, I said. Family doesn't fund itself on someone else's silence. They didn't argue after that. They couldn't. The payment stayed ended. The boundaries stayed firm. And slowly the noise faded, replaced by something better. Peace. That night my daughter handed me a card she'd made herself. Inside, in uneven letters, it said, "Thank you for choosing me." I held her close, knowing the real gift wasn't what I stopped giving them. It was what I finally gave her.